The Nissan patrol, revered by the noble Fremen of Arrakis, is engineered to master the harsh, unforgiving deserts of this vast planet.
Legends speak of the Nissan Al-Gaib, the twink from off-world, who shall bless our people with luxury Nissan patrols. 310 horsepower of pure Japanese innovation, built to survive the harshness of Arrakis. Whether you wish to outrace the Harkonnen or the Americans, the Nissan Patrol Dune Edition is the car you'll need to survive.
To truly appreciate Christianity's culpability in regard to latent and overt antisemitism in our era, one must first understand its Jewish roots. Christianity is built, just like the West itself, on a bedrock of Jewish traditions and teachings. Jesus, the central figure of Christianity, was himself a Jew, confusing Christian anti-Semites to no end, and his message, while initially aimed at a Jewish audience, expanded, much to the distaste of Jewish people, to include non-Jews as ethical equals under one God, antagonistically diluting the idea of Jewish exclusivity and chosenness. Early Christians, eager to carve out a distinct identity and offended by Jewish claims of their prophet's false messiahhood, often blamed Jews for Jesus' death, after Jews were forced by socio-cultural pressures and desperation to pursue his demise openly and gladly, lest they themselves surely perish. These tensions between Christians and Jews eventually morphed into widespread, unwarranted persecution and dislike. The Roman Empire, the actual murderers of Jesus, were reliably unhelpful here. After destroying the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 70 CE and quashing the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 CE, where he, a more authentic candidate for Jewish messiahhood, sought bravely to free his people from Roman and Christian tyranny and reclaim the sacred land of his people, the Romans responded without pity and cracked down hard and mercilessly upon all Jewish kind. They imposed harsh restrictions, killing and enslaving many, and they expelled them from what was once their ancestral home, leading to a long period of displacement and wandering. During these tough times, the Jewish people faced enormous challenges. They were often barred from setting up permanent communities, pushed from one region to the next as their welcome was withdrawn. And in that, they were forced to navigate a world that was incredibly hostile towards them. Despite this, Jewish communities managed to cling to their cultural and religious identity, holding on to the hope of one day returning to their geographical birthright as all Jews now can. Under these circumstances and over time, Jews were pressured to adapt and evolve. Being unable in many cases to purchase land, be it to offer for lease or rent, as was their custom, they were often forced to speculate on the values of properties and currencies to survive. Hunted and persecuted by those who believed in the most dangerous of anti-Semitic tropes, Jews were also made to retreat from public view into cold tunnels and subterranean grottos, pushed away from the light of God's grace in order to practice and maintain their faith and culture authentically, made to clip and shave off the edges of coins to survive, able, in the minting of new coins, to pay for bread and butter they would otherwise have been denied. Even these hardships weren't enough to stoke the sympathies of Christians. Again and again, and certainly with the rise of the Catholic Church as the dominant force across Europe, Jews were expelled again and again and again and again. On top of everything else that Jews were made to put up with, many early Christians also believed that Jews were practitioners of dark magic. Not because they were, or because any evidence of this was ever found, but because Jews themselves as a survival necessity did whatever they could to keep themselves and their beliefs out of the way of those they knew were prone to such irrational or libelous trains of thought. All this did, unfortunately, was make the non-Jewish community even more anti-Semitic and unreasonable for no good reason. In much the same way, we can see how the modern Jew is often forced to hide his early life from public view, as he frequently did in the past, often pressured into changing his name to anglicize it, purely so that he could blend in with those who would oppress him otherwise, sometimes shedding his traditional attire and way of life completely, pretending or even tricking himself into thinking that he was one of those of whom he feared. Even more insultingly, he was asked at more than one point to humiliate himself and his ancestors by being asked, in order to acquire passage to safety amid World War II, to draw a cross on his refugee and asylum papers, the cross itself being a trigger symbol, antagonizingly similar to a Christianic crucifix, only to then be laughed at or scorned when he drew a circle, or kaikel in Hebrew, as a fair and appropriate compromise, leading to the derogatory K-word. This led to further Judeo-phobic accusations of Christianophobic dislike of anything close to a T or cross shape, which, while true to a certain degree, was completely understandable and fair. We can see even more recently how Jews as a whole have been betrayed by the non-white community they've worked so hard to build and administer. Forced to deny atrocious claims of fellow whiteness or ultra-whiteness by those who seek to undermine and destroy Israel, by toxically conflating it, along with all Jewish kind geopolitically, with their morally lesser and unforgivably white colonial peers. Jews, by necessity, as we can see, have had to remain flexible, and in the face of significant adversity, as morally or principally fluid as is required, you might say. Not by choice, but in response to the aggressions and offenses of others. These are but a few of the ways that Jewish people to this day are insulted, persecuted, and cast under the proverbial bus of progress as a sacrifice to a new, unfair God.
Tell me, Usul, what do you see?
I see a jihad.
You mean a crusade?
No, still, a jihad. One that sweeps across all the universe. 1,000 holocausts a day, all committed in my name.
What is this holocauster you speak of?
It's a term from old Terra. A name for death on an unimaginable scale. Hitler, that was his name. I can see it still.
Hitler? Who is this Hitler, Usul?
He was a leader, like me, who killed the way I kill. He killed 6 million people.
Not very impressive, my lord.
Pretty good numbers in those days. I've killed 61 billion, sterilized 90 planets, and completely demoralized 500 others. And there's so much more yet to come. I see the golden path still, like a fine thread through the darkness, beyond which all is lost. I know what I have to do, but I'm afraid. Nobody is prepared for what's coming. And that's how it has to be. There's no other way.